Good evening, witchy bitchies. My name is Jess. I put the J in JT Reads, obviously. And today we are talking about all the books that I read in January 2024. In January, I read 8 books, which is a good month for me. 8 is great. I read 1,328 pages and I listened to 31 hours of audiobooks. My average rating for this month was 3.88, so almost a 4-star average rating, which is very high. And my most read genre of the month was either magic or horror, which, if I'm honest, tracks entirely. If it's got witches in it or something spooky, I'm interested. Okay, let's get to recapping. First up in January, I read Emily Wilde's Encyclopedia of Fairies by Heather Fawcett, and I rated this 5-star, my first read of January, my first read of the year, my first 5-star rating. When I put this down, I immediately pre-ordered the sequel, and that has now arrived, and I am currently reading it. It will probably be in my wrap-up for February. I mentioned it in a previous video, but the romance element in it, bearing in mind I am not a romance girly, had me kicking my feet, had me squealing, had me so invested. I had the thought, girl, you better marry him. I don't even know who I am anymore. I'm having an identity crisis, but I love the book. The female main character, Emily, is exactly what I'm looking for in a female male character. In a female male character? Am I saying female male character? Emily is exactly what I'm looking for in a female main character. She is introverted, she is intelligent, she is witty, and let us not forget Wendell. He is the lovable rogue. I enjoyed his character a lot, but I enjoyed Emily's much more, and also the dog. Big fan of the dog. Next up in January, I read Garden Spells by Sarah Addison Allen. This was a recommendation from Emily Fox, Books with Emily Fox on the YouTubes, and this was a 5-star read. Another one, straight away, one after the other. I do talk about this in a previous videos, so I will just briefly go over it. But I did, again, immediately purchase the sequel. I think the sequel is called First Frost. In fact, I accidentally bought it twice. I bought it from Amazon secondhand, and I also bought it from Wilde Books secondhand, and they both arrived within days of each other. But one was massive, so the original is a normal size paperback. But the one that I ordered from Amazon came and it was almost twice the size. It was huge. And then the World of Books sequel came and it was the same size. So I'm keeping that one and donating the other. Anyway, Emily Fox said that this was the perfect mashup of Gilmore Girls and Practical Magic, and she was so right. It had the small town feel to it, it had romance, it had witchy vibes, and I loved it. That's it. Go watch the other video if you want more infos. I have also spoken about this one in a previous video, but next up I listened to Witches Get Stuff Done by Molly Harper. It is the first in a trilogy I discovered, but we'll get to that later. And I rated this 3 stars. I did really enjoy it. I had a good time listening. I never dreaded picking it up. I enjoyed the story. It was like a quick read / listen. I wasn't overly invested in Riley, the main character's story, but I did like her as a character. She was kind of punchy. She was kind of an unexpected heroine, I guess you'd say. We also had a little essence of found family because she finds her sister witches and they become her coven. So there's Riley, Caroline and Alice. And we mainly focus on Riley's story and her romance. She falls in love with Edison. I remember nothing about him. Vaguely remember his name being Edison. What does he do? I don't know who he is or what he does. I was not that invested in the romance, but I enjoyed it. I think I said in a previous video that there was a very questionable sex scene in it. Questionable in the words that were used. So I think I mentioned a certain word, nub, in a previous video, and that just didn't work with me, you know? I was listening cringing, so that's not exactly what I want from a romance novel. But TBC. Next up in January, I read Pine by Francine Toon, and this was a loan from my local library. And let me just read you the quote on the back. They are driving home from the search party when they see her. The trees are coarse and tall in the winter light, standing like men. I was expecting to be horrified, to be creeped out, to be spookified. A little bit like my Pet Sematary t-shirt. But I was not. So I rated this a 3-star, and let me tell you for why. This book started off so strong. It was so atmospheric, it was foreboding. It really felt like you were building up to something tragic or something dramatic. It was a little bit gothic, it had an essence of witches, and we know how I love that. But then all of a sudden, it turned into a crime thriller, or what felt like a crime thriller. We were looking for missing children, and we were stumbling across abandoned houses, and it just lost all of the atmosphere for me. But there were things that were completely left unaddressed, so the witchy essence of it was just completely eradicated by the end of the story. So I had lots of questions left at the end, almost like it was... No, I was going to say it's leaving it open for a sequel, but I honestly just think it was poorly written. Sorry. This has turned into a roast, but them's are my feelings. We'll just move on real fast. I do have this as a prop, but I actually listened to it on audiobook. I listened to The Woman in Black by Susan Hill, and on Audible right now there is I think it's a Dolby Surround Audible or something along those lines. I haven't done my research, but it was good, okay? I rated this a 4-star, and honestly, if this was based on the audiobook alone, it would be 5 stars, no question asked. It was so good. It was the creepiest audiobook I've ever listened to. So you're listening to the story, but also you can hear what the main character can hear. So if there's like whispering voices, you can hear whispering voices in your ear. Do you know how unsettling that is? There were times when I was washing up and I'd be like, is the woman in black in the room? I was terrified. I jumped out of my skin so many times. It was brilliant. I would love to listen to more horror books like that, or just more audiobooks in general in that format. I loved it. So the storyline itself was just quite a traditional ghostly tale. It had all of the gothic, spooky elements of a slightly older, shall we say, horror story, and I did really enjoy it, but it is the ending that packed a punch. Otherwise, I think this probably would have been a 3-star read for me, but the ending was so powerful, so shocking. I kind of had assumed what was coming, but that didn't stop it being any more impactful. And it was so... this happened. We're done. Loved it. Loved it. So if we're going based on story, it's more of a 3-star, but the ending makes it a 4-star. And if we're going on an audiobook, it's a 5-star. Download it right now. I think it was even free on Audible. I don't think I paid for it or used one of my credits. So why are you not listening to it right now? You've got something to say to the people? Thank you so much. If you can hear Mario crying. He just wants attention. But we've got a job to do, Mario. Next up, I read Small World by Caleb Azuma Nelson, and I rated this 3 stars. I did really enjoy it, but my problem was I kept comparing it to Open Water, and I loved Open Water. I think I read it in 2022, and I rated it 5 stars immediately, so I would recommend Open Water over Small Worlds, but I think that's mostly because of the subject matter. So where Open Water was focused mainly on finding and creating and nurturing a romance, Small Worlds was focused more on... It did also have an essence of romance. Let me read you this quote. I know that a world can be 2 people occupying a space where we don't have to explain. So there was a romance element to it, and I thought that was very powerful, and I thought the story itself was very powerful, and I did enjoy all of the elements of it. It just perhaps wasn't the sort of subject that I am usually drawn to. So that's on me. I'm the problem. Hi. Next up, I read Never Whistle at Night, an Indigenous dark fiction anthology. And I rated this 4 stars. I really enjoyed this, which may not be reflected in how many videos it's mentioned in, because it was a bit of a slog, and I'll tell you for why it was a slog. It took me a month to read this, and that is because I am kind of out of touch a little bit with short stories. I'm not sure if I like them anymore because, and this is a really good example of that, because each story was incredible. They were spooky, they were powerful, they were upsetting, they were gross, everything I look for in a horror, but they're so short, and I'm so invested. I immerse myself completely in the story, and then immediately I'm thrown out as the story gets interesting. So I had to take a day or two between stories to kind of digest, sit with the story before I was ready to move on to another one. So that's why it took me so long to read. But the stories themselves were great, and definitely a 4-star read, and would highly recommend. Next up, I read Big Witch Energy, again by Molly Harper. So this is the second story in Molly Harper's trilogy we discovered. And this was exactly what I wanted when I got to the end of Witches Get Stuff Done, I really wanted to know more about Caroline's story. So Caroline is Riley's sister witch coven friend, and she is what I love about women in fiction. She is sarcastic, she is fierce, she is strong, and I just wanted to know more about her life. I wanted to know more about her past, which never happens to me, and I was really invested in her future. The reason why this was a 4-star and the previous book was a 3-star was because Molly was kind to us and she removed the cringy sex scenes. Now, Big Witch Energy does have a sex scene. I think it might have 2, maybe 3. I think it has 2. But there was no mention of a nub. She obviously got some feedback and was like, I'm going to drop the nub and just make it a sex scene. It was an enjoyable read. Thank you. But as we were getting to the end of the audiobook, I realised, I'm a little bit slow to realise things, that the first book was based on Riley, the second book then was based on Caroline, and my little brain was like, well, what about the third Coven Witch sister friend, Alice? I want to know more about her life. She's got some family problems that I would like to delve deeper into. And then, as if by magic, witchy magic, in my ear, the narrator did say, the third book is coming out in 2024. So we've got that to look forward to, and I am hoping it would make a lot of sense if the third book focuses on Alice's story. And I'm really looking forward to seeing where the story goes. So I'm obviously invested. And yeah, so 4 stars, a great read. One of those light, easy, quick reads. Last and kind of least, I need to honourably mention a DNF that I had this month, because this was part of my TBR game in January, so I'll mention it in my TBR game for February video. That was a long sentence, but we got there. I DNF'd Welcome to the Hainam Dong Bookshop by Huang Bo Riem. The cover is so pretty, but you were so disappointing! So I actually read about 35% of the way through, maybe 40%, and then skim read the rest, which is why I'm calling it a DNF, because I can't claim that I read it really, because I didn't. I just wanted to know what happened, so I skimmed. And going into this, I thought this was going to be a no plot, just vibe sort of book. Judging by the cover, as we are wont to do, I thought this was going to be a cozy, I bought a bookshop and heal my soul sort of book. But it wasn't. It started off split into 2 perspectives. I was very invested in Youngju's storyline. I was really interested to see what had happened in her past, because there was a lot of foreboding happening, and I was interested to see how managing a bookshop would go for her. But on the flip side, we had another perspective from Min Jun, and I was just not interested. He came across as a little pretentious, a bit boring, and I had no interest in seeing where his story went, or knowing anything about his past. In fact, I skipped passages when he started talking about university because I was not interested. Sorry, sir. Thank you. So because there was a lot of foreboding, I thought, okay, we're not going to be no plot, just vibes. We're going to be a little bit plot, because there were no vibes. But again, I was wrong. So there was this heavy suggestion that Youngju had abandoned her life because she was a workaholic. She had abandoned her husband and ran away and was hiding from him. So immediately I'm thinking, this is an abusive husband, and we're going to hear some tragic things that have happened in her past and really root for her building this new life for herself. She left her husband because he too was a workaholic. That was it. There's other ways of going about that. You could just have a conversation, I guess. A little communication or something. Take him with you. Start a new shop together. Or, break up with him. Get a divorce. Don't run away. If you are running away from your life to create a cozy little bookshop where you're going to have found family and lovely new friends and drink coffee all day and read books all day, I need either the vibes to be spot on, or I need the plot to be deeply tragic, and that's why you run away. For me to be invested. Otherwise, I'm just not. And I was not. And so I DNF'd it. Well, we're classing DNF. I skim read to the end to see what happened, but I'm not putting it on my Goodreads because I'm classing it as a DNF. But the cover is really pretty. Okay. So that is January's wrap-up. Those are the books that I read in January. It was a very good month for me. Some very high ratings, a couple of 5 stars, kicking off the year, kicking off the month. I'm going into February feeling enriched with good stories in my heart and soul. So with that being said, please subscribe to this channel. Please like the video if you are interested. If you have any recommendations on spooky books, or people who run away from tragic backstories and go and start bookshops, please drop a little comment down below. But otherwise, I'll see you in a video very, very soon. Bye bye.